Massachusetts would say that a 49% increase in funding for education was not enough. We've increased funds, but more importantly, we reformed the system to make sure that we solve problems early before they're too late. He talked about the unemployed. Absolutely, we've got to make sure they get educated. He talked about children whose parents don't speak English as a first language. Absolutely, we got to make sure they get educated, and that's what the No Child Left Behind Act does.
Senator.
You don't measure it by a percentage increase. Mr. President, you measure it by whether you're getting the job done. 500,000 kids lost after-school programs because of your budget. Now, that's not in my gut. That's not my value system. And certainly not so that the wealthiest people in America can walk away with another tax cut. $89 billion last year to the top 1% of Americans, but kids lost their after-school programs. You be the judge.
All right, let's go to another question, and it is to Senator Kerry. You have 2 minutes, sir. Senator, the last debate, President Bush said he did not favor a draft. You agreed with him. But our National Guard and Reserve forces are being severely strained because many of them are being held beyond their enlistments. Some of them say that it's a backdoor draft. Is there any relief that could be offered to these brave Americans and their families? If you became president, Senator Kerry, what would you do about this situation of holding National Guard and reservists for these extended periods of time and these repeated call-ups that they're now facing?
Well, I think the fact that they're facing these repeated call-ups, some of them 2 and 3 deployments, and there's a stop-loss policy that prevents people from being able to get out when their time was up, is a reflection of the bad judgment this president exercised in how he has engaged in the world and deployed our forces. Our military is overextended. 9 out of 10 active-duty Army divisions are either in Iraq, going to Iraq, or have come back from Iraq. One way or the other, they're wrapped up in it. Now, I've proposed adding 2 active-duty divisions to the Armed Forces of the United States, 1 combat, 1 support. In addition, I'm going to double the number of special forces so that we can fight a more effective war on terror with less pressure on the National Guard and Reserve. And what I would like to do is see the National Guard and Reserve be deployed differently here in our own country. There's much we can do with them with respect to homeland security. We ought to be doing that. And that would relieve an enormous amount of pressure. But the most important thing to relieve the pressure on all of our armed forces is, frankly, to run a foreign policy that recognizes that America is strongest when we are working with real alliances, when we are sharing the burdens of the world by working through our statesmanship at the highest levels and our diplomacy to bring other nations to our side. I've said it before, I say it again. I believe the President broke faith with the American people in the way that he took this nation to war. He said he would work through a real alliance. He said in Cincinnati we would plan carefully. We would take every precaution. Well, we didn't. And the result is our forces today are overextended. The fact is that he did not choose to go to war as a last resort. And America now is paying already $120 billion, up to $200 billion before we're finished, and much more probably. And that is the result of this president taking his eye off of Osama bin Laden.
Mr. President.
The best way to take the pressure off our troops is to succeed in Iraq, is to train Iraqis so they can do the hard work of democracy, is to give them a chance to defend their country, which is precisely what we're doing. We'll have 125,000 troops trained by the end of this year. I remember going on an airplane in Bangor, Maine, to say thanks to the reservists and Guard that were headed overseas from Tennessee and North Carolina and Georgia. Some of them have been there before. People I talked to, the spirits were high. They didn't view their service as a backdoor draft. They viewed their service as an opportunity to serve their country. My opponent, Senator, talks about foreign policy. In our first debate, he proposed America pass a global test. In order to defend ourselves, we have to get international approval. That's one of the major differences we have about defending our country. I'll work with allies. I'll work with friends. We'll continue to build strong coalitions. But I will never turn over our national security decision to leaders of other countries. We'll be resolute. We'll be strong, and we'll wage a comprehensive war against the terrorists.
Senator.
I have never suggested a test where we turn over our security to any nation. In fact, I've said the opposite. I will never turn the security of the United States over to any nation. No nation will ever have a veto over us. But I think it makes sense. I think most Americans in their guts know that we ought to pass a sort of truth standard. That's how you gain legitimacy with your own country, people, and that's how you gain legitimacy in the world. But I'll never fail to protect the United States of America.
In 1990, there was a vast coalition put together to run Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. The international community, the international world said this is the right thing to do. But when it came time to authorize the use of force on the Senate floor, my opponent voted against the use of force. Apparently, you can't pass any test under his vision of the world.
Mr. President, new question, 2 minutes. You said that if Congress would vote to extend the ban on assault weapons, that you'd sign the legislation. But you did nothing to encourage the Congress to extend it. Why not?
Actually, I made my intentions, my views clear. I did think we ought to extend the assault weapons ban, and was told the fact that the bill was never going to move because the Republicans and Democrats were against the assault weapon ban, people of both parties. Now, I believe law-abiding citizens ought to be able to own a gun. I believe in background checks at gun shows or anywhere to make sure that guns don't get in the hands of people that shouldn't have them. But the best way to protect our citizens from guns is to prosecute those who commit crimes with guns. And that's why early in my administration I called the Attorney General and the U.S. attorneys and said, put together a task force all around the country to prosecute those who commit crimes with guns. And the prosecutions are up by about 68%, I believe is the number. Neighborhoods are safer when we crack down on people who commit crimes with guns. To me, that's the best way to secure America.
Senator?
I believe it was a failure of presidential leadership not to reauthorize the assault weapons ban. I'm a hunter. I'm a gun owner. I've been a hunter since I was a kid, 12, 13 years old. And I respect the Second Amendment, and I will not tamper with the Second Amendment. But I'll tell you this, I'm also a former law enforcement officer. I ran one of the largest district attorney offices in America, one of the 10 largest. I've put people behind bars for the rest of their life. I've broken up organized crime. I know something about prosecuting. And most of the law enforcement agencies in America wanted that assault weapons ban. They don't want to go into a drug bust and be facing an AK-47. I was hunting in Iowa last year with the sheriff from one of the counties there, and he pointed to a house in back of us and said, see that house over there? We just did a drug bust a week earlier, and the guy we arrested had an AK-47 lying on the bed right beside him. Because of the President's decision today, law enforcement officers will walk into a place that will be more dangerous. Terrorists can now come into America and go to a gun show and, without even a background check, buy an assault weapon today. And that's what Osama bin Laden's handbook said, because we captured it in Afghanistan and encouraged them to do it. So I believe America is less safe. If Tom DeLay or someone in the House said to me, sorry, we don't have the votes, I'd have said, then we're going to have a fight. And I'd have taken it out to the country, and I'd have had every law enforcement officer in the country visit those congressmen. We'd have won what Bill Clinton won.
Let's go to a new question. For you, Senator Kerry, 2 minutes. Affirmative action. Do you see a need for affirmative action programs, or have we moved far enough along that we no longer need to use race and gender as a factor in school admissions and federal and state contracts and so on?
No, Bob. Regrettably, we have not moved far enough along. And I regret to say that this administration has even blocked steps that could help us move further along. I'll give you an example. I've served on the Small Business Committee for a long time. I was chairman of it once. Now I'm the senior Democrat on it. We used to, we have a goal there for minority set-aside programs to try to encourage ownership in the country. They don't reach those goals. They don't even fight to reach those goals. They've tried to undo them. The fact is that in too many parts of our country, we still have discrimination. And affirmative action is not just something that applies to people of color. Some people have a mistaken view of it in America. It also is with respect to women. It's with respect to other efforts to try to reach out and be inclusive in our country. I think that we have a long way to go, regrettably. If you look at what's happened, we've made progress. I want to say that at the same time. During the Clinton years, as you may recall, there was a fight over affirmative action. And there were many people, like myself, who opposed quotas, who felt there were places where it was overreaching. So we had a policy called mend it, don't end it. We fixed it. And we fixed it for a reason, because there are